Once broke, will always be broken. You know my name from a different place and time. No game will ever really be worth it. In the end, it was you who lost your mind. It's just a mood, 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 it's just a You're pulling me in and peeping me out. I can't admit I had my doubts. A shot to my heart I never expect. You gave me life back from the dead. I'm the perfect man. What's the purpose? If you were me, what would you say? Perfect pretense to cast your shade. I can't recall a time from before. You were the one who needed more. I'm the perfect man. Doing nothing. Help me understand. What's the purpose? that sun will heal your pain until you come back home to me. I'm the perfect man, feeling nothing. Help me understand. What's the purpose? I'm a perfect man, feeling nothing. Help me understand. What's the purpose? Thank you for having us. We are Immortal Girlfriend. Everybody have a good night.
Hey. Yeah, hey. I'm wonderful, look at my glow, yeah, hey. I'm one of the realest I know, yeah, hey. Grateful for all of my bros, yeah, hey. I run through the floor with my, yeah. Running I be on my toes. Got my machete swung over my shoulder. Chopping up all of you. Can I compete with my flow cause I'm colder? You just a Liberty Rock. I am much bigger than you, I'm a boulder. Flying up over you, yeah. You better move because I am a vulture. They think I'm an underdog. They saying that I'm problematic, but I'm swinging at these broads. I'm versatile and they so static. They keep trying to isolate me. This ain't flowers in the attic. You can never debate me, hate me because I'm fantastic. Damn, I wanna be sedated. Take tequila with no chaser. Text that boy like what you doing, but ain't never been a chaser. Tell that boy to keep it moving. I can never be replaced. These imitation diamonds, but I'm certified. I take the cake like yeah. Cut to the chase. You coming for me, you never be safe. Yeah, get in my face. I got the curses and I got the mace. Yeah, get in my way. You don't want none of me, plus I'm allergic. Yeah, I got the punch. Never repeat myself saying it once. I want the money I want. Want it for breakfast and dinner and lunch. Want to more than everything that they want. So I can just move right and bust all that joint. Nothing that I am about is a front. I do not care about your feelings and blunt. I tell your boyfriend to pass me the. I tell your boyfriend to go for the. Sorry, not sorry. I don't play those games, Atari. My first name, Sicario, from a prophet. I'ma start going far just to profit. Stop it. Let's put that money in my wallet. Want about let him be wildin'. I want about let him be wildin', like. I'm wonderful, look at my glow, yeah, hey. I'm one of the realest I know, yeah, hey. Grateful for all of my bros, yeah. I run through the floor with my well, yeah. Running I be on my toes. Got my machete swung over my shoulder. Chopping up all of you. Can I compete with my flow cause I'm colder? You just a Liberty Rock. I am much bigger than you, I'm a boulder. Flying up over you, yeah. You better move because I am a vulture. Sometimes I'm not friendly. Work so much that it might kill me, so it might get silly. Rockin' my jeans, don't call me Billy, and I'm not from Philly. But I get that cheese, don't mistake me for no dummy. Smiling in my face, but then they acting funny. I don't know what they want from me. Been a real one since day one, honey. Reach for the top, get that money, doing what I gotta do. Hey, I'm comfortable and I am so legit. I am so unique and lovable. I'm untouchable, rude, but do not call me huxtable. I'm the caviar, the rest of them Lunchables. Man, I've been a ruler on my darkened planet. I was meant to be here, no, I did not plan it. I'm so incredible, they can't stand it. Watching the throne, I made a crown. I got the power and I'm on a mission to blow. Rapping in circles around all the brothers, nobody can mess with my flow. Asking for favors after you was hating, my answer is gonna be no. For infinity, I am Mecca and I am the Trinity. God, I'm like, whoa. and I'll never fall by the wayside. Rather be back from the right like Piggy. Top my dough, but my name not Twiggy. Smoking the ganja, love with the ciggy. Do what you gotta do, no biggie. Once with a wise man, somebody don't put the gun in my right hand. Didn't understand, but it got knocked out. Got back up like a tight end. Chin up, kick you fighting. Things don't go my way, I manifest it. Otherwise not interested. You could be fired by one day. Just in my temple is only consuming the freshest stuff. It's all facts. Say you don't like me, I smell cap. Either way you go, we'll do all that. Get with the winning team, it's our turn. Man, I've been the ruler of my fucking planet. I was meant to be here, no, I did not plan it. I'm so incredible, they can't stand it. Watching the throne, hand me the crown. I got the power and I'm on the mission to blow. Rapping in circles around all the brothers, nobody can mess with my flow. Asking for favors after you was hating, my answer is gonna be no. For infinity, I am Mega and I am the Trinity. God, I'm like, whoa. And I'll never fall by the wayside. Fall asleep now, my mind closed, my eyes closed.
Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Maureen Regali, and I'm the director of gener8tor, based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. gener8tor is a 12-week accelerator program for visual artists, helping artists achieve greater success by providing the support and mentorship needed to maintain a sustainable practice and navigate the art industry. gener8tor provides $15,000 grants to the artists who participate in the accelerator program, along with coaching, mentoring, and networking with visual arts leaders. Tonight we are celebrating the 4 artists who are part of the 2021 gener8tor cohort: Phoenix Brown, Jessica Harvey, LaNia Sproles, and Hope Wang. These amazing artists completed the 12-week gener8tor Accelerator program, and they are here to present their work and showcase some of their recent projects. Before I hand things over to the artists, I'd like to take a moment to thank our program sponsor, the American Family Insurance Institute for Corporate and Social Impact. gener8tor wouldn't be possible without their support. I'd like to hand things over to Naira Jordan, the Social Impact Investment Director at AmFam.
Hello, everyone. My name is Naira Jordan, and I'm one of the Community and Social Impact Directors with the American Family Insurance Institute for Corporate and Social Impact. It's an honor for us at the Institute to partner with gener8tor as sponsors of gener8tor, and we're excited for this 2021 artist cohort. We are grateful to have collaborators whose goals align with our own to close equity gaps and provide access and opportunities to talented entrepreneurs, musicians, and visual artists. Art is a critical form of cultural and community expression. As we look at social justice movements, artists have been at the forefront in conveying the voices of communities that have too long been silenced. American Family Insurance is dedicated to supporting local artist engagement initiatives because art can serve as the voice of a community. Our role is to encourage, nurture, and support artists that are fearless dreamers who use their gift to remind communities that everyone can rise, flourish, and change the world for the better. I want to personally thank Maureen and the team at gener8tor for your continued partnership, and more importantly, congratulations to the artists that we're all here to celebrate. So let's get to it. Thank you and enjoy the showcase.
Thank you, Naira, for those kind words. We greatly appreciate your support for gener8tor. Now, without further ado, I'd like to hand things over to the artists so that they can tell you about their artistic practices and so that they can share some of their work with you. First up, I'd like to introduce Phoenix Brown. Phoenix Brown is a Milwaukee-based artist who uses painting, printmaking, and drawing to highlight dialogues around Black feminism, personal narrative, and pop culture. She uses diverse mediums and methods of making to confront Western art history's portrayal of nature, still life, and the Black female body. Phoenix, I'll hand things over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Phoenix Brown and I'm an interdisciplinary artist based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And tonight I'm just going to be talking about my background as an artist, some of the works that I've made, and then also some of the works I'm currently working on in my studio. So as just a brief intro to who I am, I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio. For those who don't know where Cincinnati is, it's like a city on the border of Ohio and Kentucky on the Ohio River. And I came up to Milwaukee originally to go to school at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. And I've been in Milwaukee since 2015, and I graduated in 2019 with a BFA in new studio practice and a minor in art history. And during my studies at MIAD, I also attended Yale Norfolk School of Art, where I was basically an artist in residence in Norfolk, Connecticut on one of Yale's campuses, and I was able to study underneath some of the instructors that work at the School of Art. So I always bring that up because it's kind of a turning point in my work where I really began to make the work that I really wanted to make. So after graduation, I kind of was a little bit of a floater, and I also, after graduation, I got a free studio space at Plum Blossom Initiative. It's not, I don't think I listed it on the screen, but it's a program that kind of springboards of emerging artists right after graduation from MIAD and University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So I was able to get that. And then towards the end of 2019, I was awarded the Aber Family Curatorial Fellowship at the Milwaukee Art Museum. So this is where my art history brain kind of begins to function, where I'm supporting the American art collection at the museum and doing a lot of programming and supporting the exhibitions and the objects in the collection. And currently I am a MyEd instructor this year. It's my first year teaching, which is kind of cool. And I was also a Linden artist in residence earlier this spring, where I was teaching local Milwaukee students to make different objects. And yeah, and I just recently finished up my artist in residence at the Contemporary Arts Center in Cincinnati. It was an education-based residency. So yes, I'm a kind of a busy person, but yeah, I enjoy the work that I do. So a little bit about the work that I make. So my intentions with my work is to basically reclaim like Western, I guess, preconceived notions of Black female bodies in Western painting. And I reclaim those notions and just the representation of Black bodies in painting through returning agency back to the figures that I show in my work, and also just kind of giving them the choice to be able to be exposed in the painting or like kind of covered up. So that's where my abstraction brain begins to function. And a lot of my work is also pulled from my experiences as a childhood. So for example, for this painting on the screen, it's titled Black plus Tall equals Basketball, and it's about my anxiety of feeling not Black enough amongst my peers and other students in middle school. And because I was a tall human and was Black, I was just kind of, I don't know, there was like a notion where I should be able to play basketball. So this was a painting that I made during my senior thesis at MyEd, and that kind of, I don't know, kind of opened up the doors to me to become more open about the work that I make and where it's coming from. And also another new leg of my practice is botanical taxonomy, or just beginning to resist those sort of confines of like categorizing plants. So in a way, like I try to resist being able, or for plant classifications to be employed onto my work. So I find that to be like a resistance of like Western standards of like labeling and things. And I think it also kind of begins to have like sort of like a colonizing history or like kind of context. So I'm all about resisting that, and I'm still kind of working through the research with that, but I kind of explored that in this painting, where I began to use like flowers or just flower gestures and just like kind of like non-specific imageries of like flowers and things, and reclaiming those. And also the figures in the painting are kind of embedded as well. So I'm kind of going back to that agency idea of where figures can choose what parts of their bodies are revealed to resist the white male gaze. So yeah, so this painting is also kind of the same thing, about sort of like reclaiming my Blackness as a human being in this painting called Disruption. So yeah, this piece is the final leg, not the final leg, but like just like another part in my practice where I'm thinking about like my ancestral history and then heirlooms and then ideas being passed down to me and bodies being passed down to me through like my ancestors. So I'm kind of thinking in this painting about like maybe an heirloom that a previous ancestor left behind for me. And then at the top of the frame, there's like a figure with folded hands. And I kind of cut the top part of their bodies because it's like a human that I've never met or never known. So I don't know, I think I'm just thinking about a lot about history and like archiving kind of things, or just pretending to make-believe archives, if that makes sense. So yeah, very new part of my practice, but that's what I'm excited about currently. And I also do commission work as well. So this was just a painting I made for a commission facilitated by the Trout Museum of Art to like kind of help raise money for their institution. So just a quick kind of intro to how I produce paintings. My process usually starts off with just a quick drawing. So the image on the left is just like a random image of some non-specific leaves. And I didn't really know where I was going with it, but usually when I don't know what I'm doing or I need another idea, I usually keep an Instagram save file in my Instagram account. So sometimes I take images like my friends post or people that I know post, and then like I'll take those images and collage them together through Photoshop. And then the image on the right is just sort of the result of that collaging. So I included a lot of images from Instagram, and I also use Snapchat as well in the studio when I make paintings. So oftentimes I'll begin to make quick sketches over the paintings like live, and then once I get an image that I like, I just copy it verbatim from what I drew. So then I get these really cool, like, impossible brush strokes in my work where it's a kind of like, I don't know, it looks like a pen tool or a paintbrush tool in like a computer software program. So I'm kind of connecting sort of like 21st century modes of making and like kind of still keeping this Western ideal of painting kind of alive in some ways, or just kind of reclaiming those textures and different ways of painting. So I'm just kind of making my own different genre of like creating abstract paintings. So this is some of the current work that I've made during my time with gener8tor. I've been focusing a lot more on like producing images with more like floral references, really kind of driving forward that idea of botanical taxonomy. So this painting is titled Night Walk, and I was just thinking about, I was kind of reminiscing about when I was like in high school. My high school was downtown Cincinnati, so I spent a lot of time in the city. And I'm just thinking about like all the different fences and different kind of, I don't know, kind of reoccurring patterns and things that I would see in the evenings of walking home from school and things. So I included a lot of that, and then just a figure in the center. She's like a black woman taking up space, or she belongs in the space, or the space can't exist without her because she's like a core integral part to this composition. So this is another painting that I created during my time with gener8tor, and it's titled That's My Favorite Part. And it's a painting that discusses like the fetishization of Black, I guess basically essentially Black culture and Black parts of bodies and things. And I'm taking that and kind of collaging it with this super abstracted corner in the lower left-hand corner of the painting. And this painting is more so about like how like Black culture has been mangled, like especially like on social media and our like pop culture spaces. So I'm just kind of thinking about like, wow, where Blackness is and what it's not, and then how people just take it and just do whatever they want with it and tear it up, essentially. But it's also a painting that doesn't like give like a resolution, because I strongly believe that it's the oppressor's problem to go figure out how to not to be oppressive and quit oppressing Black people. It's not our responsibility to treat the oppressor or like to teach them how not to like harm us. So I really like this painting because it has like a faux strip of fur in the center of it. So that's like kind of a new thing for me as well. I'm very like, I think of my paintings as a very sculptural object rather than something that's 2D. And this is a recent commission that I made during my time. And I made this commission for like a nice couple. And they really were like very politically like active. So they were really interested in a work that kind of resembled like breaking down systems and like resistance. So I titled this painting You Got Me, after a song by The Roots. And oftentimes I name a lot of my work after like bands or like different songs that I like, because I'm also a musician. I play guitar. I've been playing guitar since I was like in the 7th grade. So it's just like a part of me that I'm beginning to like revisit. And I noticed I've had more space since I graduated from my head to revisit my interests, or I have more time to explore. So I'm kind of excited to see where my work is going to be in like 5 years from now. And I've also been doing a lot of drawing as well, especially since the pandemic. I didn't have a studio like last year, like most of last year. So I was kind of forced to start working a little smaller. So I began to like kind of bust out these drawings throughout my time during the pandemic. And I really like them because they're very colorful and very expressive. And I'm beginning to see drawing as a tool, not like no longer as a tool, I should say. It's more so just like a discipline itself rather than a tool. I used to see drawing as a tool, but now I don't see it that way anymore. So I've just been kind of experimenting and thinking of different ways to like use colored pencils. That's been my favorite medium to draw with lately. And seeing how the colored pencil drawings will eventually influence my work and what kind of discussion they'll have between the two disciplines. So these are just some quick cell phone shots of like works that I'm currently working on. So the one on the left, I mean, they're both colored pencil drawings, but the one on the left, I use Snapchat. And I made the little drawings and things inside the program and then translated it onto the paper with colored pencil. And the one on the right, I was imagining like flashlights hitting some grass at night. So I kind of highlighted the area where the flashlight would be hitting, and then the other areas are kind of dark. So I'm just kind of thinking about different ways to portray light, and then also like different gestures with colored pencils. So I'm kind of treating colored pencil drawing as like a painterly discipline now. And finally, these projects were a part of my residency at the Contemporary Arts Center in Cincinnati. So it was an education-based residency where I taught virtual classes online to students. And I would teach them, and then in their like little like kit boxes where they get their supplies, I would have like an envelope to like an address to my studio space, and they would mail me their works that they made and send it up to me in Milwaukee, and I would include some of their works into this painting I'm producing. This painting is still in progress, but I just wanted to show like an image of where it's at right now. So yeah, I made it like a flower pot, and a lot of the images on the right are actually my examples that I produced for the workshop, so I didn't really include any of the students' workshop just for like privacy. But yeah, this is what I spent my summer doing. Thanks to gener8tor, I was able to have the time to like work on this, which was excellent. And this is my space at the Sherman Phoenix, also provided by gener8tor. And this is where I primarily work. I often work at least least once a week I visit my studio, maybe twice if I'm like trying to hit a deadline, because I also work at the Milwaukee Art Museum at the same time. So I'm kind of a jack of all trades, really. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your work with us, Phoenix. I think we have time for one question. Would you mind talking a little bit more about your shift to making drawings? What inspired that shift in your creative practice? How do your drawings relate to your painting and collage work?
I shifted to drawing during the pandemic because I didn't have a studio space, so I was forced to draw things very kind of more compact rather than a large scale painting. But I've also begun to revisit drawing because I used to have a lot of anxiety about drawing, especially when I was in high school, because I had a teacher that told me anime drawing isn't art. So I'm like, okay, that means no drawing whatsoever is art, and it's all preliminary, just a preliminary practice to prep for a painting. So obviously I got that all mixed up, and now that during the pandemic I was forced to draw, now I kind of feel more confident in drawing, and I can use it as a discipline. I still trying to see how how drawing will affect my paintings, but I think I already draw them at paintings as well with oil pastel, so I think they've been communicating this entire time. But I definitely predict more drawing textures to start appearing in my paintings throughout this year and next year.
Thank you so much, Phoenix. Next, I'd like to introduce Jessica Harvey. Jessica is a recent addition to the Milwaukee art community. She moved to Milwaukee from Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2020. She uses photography, video, sound, archival resources, and objects constructed from everyday materials to create images and installations that focus on memory and place, with a particular emphasis on the role of women in personal or familial histories. Through humor and tragedy, she creates a new way of re-evaluating life, death, and the mythology of our own history. Jessica will be joining us today from Acre Artist Residency in Steuben, Wisconsin. Jessica, I'll let you start your presentation now.
Thanks so much to gener8tor Art for hosting us tonight. I feel really grateful to be in the company of such incredible artists. My name is Jessica Harvey, and I am an artist and writer in Milwaukee who works with pretty extensively with the archive, both institutional and personal archives, working with the notions of memory and attachment to place and how our histories change by who is able to be the narrator at that point in time. I'm going to talk about a couple of projects that I'm currently working on, and then some future projects that I have in the work. I unexpectedly became the caretaker for my aunt at the end of her life, and while we didn't have a close personal relationship, I ended up being in that position. So this project, Ashes to Ashes, is a visual project, as well as during the pandemic, when I didn't have a studio, I also did quite a bit of writing about the project and what it means to give care to somebody at the opposite end of the political and ideological spectrum, while also protecting and caring for yourself. What does it mean to be a queer person, caring for someone who might not think that you or people like you should exist the way that you do in the world? I also work a lot in this project with bodily materials, and when I was cleaning out my aunt's home, after she passed away, I found a box of photographs that said, or I found a box that I thought were photographs, and it was labeled kids. And I thought they were photographs because my aunt didn't have any children of her own. But upon opening the box, I found all these smaller boxes of cremated remains of her pets. So that led me to believe, that her animals were the most important people in her life, her children. So I took these remains and made a series of photograms, which is when you put an object on a light sensitive piece of paper and expose it to light. So these are 8x10 silver gelatin prints of the cremated remains of my aunt's pets. And they look quite celestial. And the series is called Universe, Portrait of My Aunt and Her Children. And each print is unique based on the way that the ashes fall on the piece of paper. I also made a series of crystals for each pet. So I found a way to use alum and make alum crystals using the cremated remains, and they kind of grow on the center of the remains, and then the crystals grow outward. And each pet has their own crystal. I made a series of vials that held the ashes of each individual pet. When you look at them closely, they look a bit like beach sand. And this is just another way that I've used the remains in a type of portraiture. I also had the chance in 2019 to make a immersive installation at Coop Gallery in Nashville, Tennessee. When you enter this space, it almost looks like a black room until your eyes adjust and you can see that there's one source of light. When you walk around the space, there's this crunching noise that's made, and it's from the crystal residue that was from growing the crystals. There's a lot of waste, crystal waste, when the crystals are grown. So I spread it on the floor and embedded the actual crystals in the walls of the space. There's also an audio element, and it was a bit smoky. So you can see here how the fog shifts within the space. I think of each exhibition as an opportunity to rethink and reshape the project. This project with my aunt as a whole is titled Ashes to Ashes. And this is an iteration of some of the work from an exhibition last year in Trondheim at Kunsthal Trondheim in Norway. And they displayed the photograms and then also made this beautiful box to encase the crystals. And they're more of a sort of a specimen installation for this work. But I was going through my aunt's house, I found a lot of things that reference the body without having the body intact in its whole form. So I used collections that I found in my aunt's home, such as these marble eggs, and combined them with this bodily material. Here is hair from a person, a ponytail from a person that no one knows whose hair it is. I found a collection of metronomes in my aunt's house, and there are 2 metronomes that are set to beat off time. And the timing that they're set to is the final heartbeat reading that my aunt had on the day that she died. So each day I would record, keep a catalog of vitals and information. And this was the last time that her heartbeat was taken before she passed away. During this time, I also started to get some gray hairs, and I crystallized them as a way to kind of interject a bit of humor into this work that could also be seen as quite heavy. I currently have an installation at the South Bend Museum of Art, and it's part of their Biennial 31 exhibition. And I took this as an opportunity. And what was actually really great about being part of gener8tor Art was that I had the time and the space to really think about and reshape this work that I've been using for the past 4 years. So I made a different sort of installation. The white circle is the crystals from the cremated remains from the pets. And the center photograph is a pizography print that was made from the photograms. And then I also was able to have the time and the studio because of gener8tor to create a new body of work within this larger project. And so this body of work is called Joey. These are photographs where I took the silver from old family photos that my aunt, before she had passed away, had sent to my mom to give to me because she knew I was a photographer and thought that I could use them. But they were from the history of an abusive ex-partner of hers from when he was born till he became an adult. And I had no connection or attachment to this person, so I didn't really know what to do with them. But then once my aunt passed away, I thought the best way to display this work was to remove the silver from each photograph. So I removed the silver and create a transfer image. The matte also kind of obscures what other parts of the photograph would be, and they're cut in different sizes of the photograph and placed in, not sort of a traditional way in the center of the image to kind of give them this movement. And this is an image of what the transfer looks like. And this is what a photograph would look like once the silver was removed. And I never show the actual original photograph unless there's something interesting written on the back. And then I do use the back of the photograph to give that information. And just, to also as a sidebar, but also a big part of my work is humor. And so I also made a portrait of my mother. So these projects are kind of using different materials to create these portraits. And this is a portrait of my mom where she had canned her own farts. And I have an audio piece as a companion where my mom used to try to leave me a message on my voice message that was a fart, but she could never time it just right. So she got a mini cassette recorder and would record them, and she had hundreds of them. And I made a portrait of her for a 5-minute. I cut it down to a 5-minute piece using her farts, which was funny, but also I think a bit sweet. So it's kind of like a tender humorous portrait of my mom. I like to say, she's from Baltimore, and her, idol growing up was John Waters. So it seemed like a fitting portrait. This last piece is what I'm working on now. And, part of being a part of gener8tor, like I came to Milwaukee during the pandemic, and, they really acted as a connector to get to know people in the Milwaukee art scenes. And so this is a piece called Daybreak, where during the pandemic, I would record a field recording each morning when the sun rose. So here's a little preview of that. And there's a phone number that you can call, and each morning the voicemail will change. Almost every morning, the voicemail will change. So if you call 918-248-6622, you can hear where I am outdoors. And this project just kind of acted as a grounding ritual each morning during the pandemic. I would also take photographs and videos each morning. So I'm going to turn this into a more immersive sound installation with the field recordings, and then also would like to make it a physical space with projections of these images. And you'll be able to see an iteration of this project during the Terrain Biennial, which was a biennial that was started by Sabina Ott in 2013 that made like free, accessible public art and sculpture outside of people's homes, in their windows. It was, pretty local to the Chicago Park area, but now it's more national and even international in scale. So I'll have that on view in Milwaukee, and the biennial runs from October 2nd till November 15th. So I'm really excited to work on that work, and thanks so much to gener8tor for giving me the time and the space to make this work possible.
Thank you for sharing your work, Jessica. I'm curious, since some of your work has to do with the theme of mortality, do you think there will be a shift in how people perceive your work after we have all experienced a collective reckoning with our own mortality? How do you think our collective experience with mortality and grief will change or inspire the work that you create?
Thanks for that question. I think that in terms of how there's been a shift in people perceiving my work in terms of how they relate to mortality. In the past year and a half, I think that people have felt things more deeply and maybe have a bit more openness in talking about grief and death. Though, until last month, I had never been in the same place as my artwork publicly. I would either have to ship it off or not been able to go to the shows that it's been. So the conversations that I'm having about my work definitely seem to be around how people are more open to speaking about death and loss. And especially in terms of my aunt's project. When I think about like a collective experience with mortality and grief, I don't think, especially in the United States, that we're seeing things in the same way. I think there's been sort of this mythology about death being a great equalizer, or COVID being some sort of disease, virus that doesn't discriminate. But you see constantly how poor people are not able to access care in the same way, that we still haven't had any sort of major decentering of whiteness in the United States. And until that happens, I think there will always be a huge split in this notion of collective memory. In terms of how it might change my work, I think about the Daybreak project that might not be specifically about death or grief, or it might be so clear that that work is about that. Though I do think it encapsulates a sort of moment in time, and I'm interested to see how people experience that piece when it's a more immersive installation rather than just this phone call of one-to-one connectedness that happens.
Thank you, Jessica. I'll be interested to see how your work evolves post-pandemic. Next, I'd like to introduce LaNia Sproles. LaNia Sproles is a Milwaukee artist who uses printmaking, drawing, and collage to interwork philosophies of self-perception, queer and feminist theories, and inherent racial dogmas. Her work focuses on the Black femme body as a location of trauma and compromised autonomy, while figures in her work act as a reclamation of space as a queer person of color. LaNia, I'll hand things over to you.
Hi, my name is LaNia Sproles. I'm an artist living in Milwaukee. I went to Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. I studied printmaking, and now I'm a practicing artist, kind of a jack of all trades. I do community arts work, lots of things in my studio, and I would like to talk about my process before I get into the things that I've been working on this past year. So just a glimpse into how I start off a piece. So usually I find a photo reference, and then I kind of go ahead and make it a little bit more fantastical, grabbing from different corners of my interests, whether that's art historical references, things that I see on Instagram, and kind of like funneling everything into one piece. So this is actually a photo of me and my best friend at a dinner party 2 years ago, one on the right, and the image on the left is a sketch of that event. So I really wanted to honor just the fun that I had and remember all the delicious things that I ate. And this piece was made during the height of the quarantine, so I feel like it was a very cathartic piece for me to make. So I put all different types of symbols in there, and I also wanted to celebrate just our sisterhood. I was very grateful for our friendship, but there's also notions of care throughout the whole entire piece. So the plant at the top is actually the first plant that I bought when I moved out of my parents, and now it's like almost 3 feet tall. The cake on the table is even very symbolic meaning to me. I have a friend, Hudson, who's trans and who makes birthday cakes for other trans people for free, and I just was really not really taken aback, but just very appreciative and very inspired by that. Taking responsibility and taking care of the people around you and your community is very important to me. And also this smoked salmon, I remember I've never had smoked salmon made fresh, and like I just remember being very excited to try it, and also a nod to Artemisia Gentileschi's piece of beheading Holofernes. There's a head on the table, and I just remember feeling like the pandemic and the quarantine was not handled very well by people in power. And I think this piece is kind of like a meeting ground of like remembering the people that are taking care of me and the people that I'm surrounded by, but also like dining on the flesh of people who don't deserve to be in power. So here's another example of how I start off a piece. Sometimes I'll take pictures and then I manipulate them in Photoshop, and then I'll draw on top of them to kind of get it to a point where I feel confident enough to turn it into a finished composition. So you can kind of see here how I got to point A to point B. So this is usually how I make a lot of my drawings and my 2D work. This piece, it's titled Superstar. So this piece is about just ending an era of myself. And I sometimes like to be very dramatic about how whatever I'm going through. And I really wanted to capture me shedding an old self. And I got to play around with some pastels and gouache. So it was really interesting kind of seeing both of those mediums come together in harmony. So this is another piece that I made this year. This is the most recent piece that I've made. So again, I am pulling from different parts of my life, mainly looking at social media, so the way people dress, mainly brown people brown queer folks and like how they adorn themselves is very interesting to me. I think there's sort of this nice power that you get having control over how you want to be perceived. Sometimes I find like random memes and I use that to influence the composition in my work. So lots of things, like lots of patterns, and I'm really attracted to fashion. Actually wanted to be a fashion designer when I was younger. And I feel that influence is still kind of in me and it pops up in different places in my work. So this is a collage piece. So I kind of view my collage pieces more of like a maximized version of what I do 2D. So the point is to take up as much space as possible, and the pieces are meant to kind of stop people in their tracks, but also I think sometimes when something's a little bit bigger or larger than the average size human, I think it kind of pulls you to the composition in the piece. And sometimes when I have the energy to do it, I like to explore topics where I can really push the scale of things. And so people have a choice. Well, people really don't have a choice but to interact with the piece because it is very large. So this piece is about my relationship with my little sister and a friend of mine. And I really wanted to just capture them having a picnic with a cute little chihuahua. And also because these are the same people that I think they pull something out of me I think not other friends can. I really do feel very grounded when I'm around these two people. And also hierarchy was very important to me, so I really wanted to make sure to make my sister the figure in focus. And my friend Cecilia is the small one at the table. So this is just pictures of me installing my work, mainly the larger collages at the Arts Literature Lab in Madison. I have a solo show there, and it'll be up until September 21st. So you can kind of see, like, this is a lot larger than my smaller drawings. Sometimes my collages are smaller, but they're still engaging with the white wall space. So another part of my practice, as I was saying earlier, is my community arts work. So this year it's been looking more so in mural forms and getting commissioned to do murals. So recently I got commissioned to paint a mural for the Sky High Skate Shop, which is a skate shop in Bayview. And the unveiling was on the same day as their Lady and Queer Skate Night. And I just felt very honored that my piece was in conjunction with this like very sacred event, and it seemed like everybody was very happy. And I think it's also very important that people of color and just also queer people have their sacred spaces. So it was really nice, and the owner of Sky High was super sweet, Aaron, and I just really cherish these moments of like being able to. Well, it's also just very nice to be like trusted by the community to make something that makes them feel good about what's going on. And I really just felt very honored. I was very lucky and I got to kind of do whatever I wanted. And I wanted to be very clear on putting brown bodies first, and also kind of just like playing around with the imagery that I've always wanted to put in a public space. And the title of this mural is We Are Love, You Are Love. So it'll be up for a whole year. So this blank wall is the side of the Jewish community pantry. And I was commissioned by Artists Working in Education recently to paint a mural for the Metcalf neighborhood. That's the name of the neighborhood where it's at. To paint a mural pretty much that best represented a lot of the citizens' wishes and like what they wanted. And it was really awesome because I got to look through booklets that were handed out to all the people in the neighborhood, and they got to write about what sort of thing they wanted in the mural. And so I read through like maybe 50 books, and it was really nice because I got to kind of gather whatever I learned from the booklets and turn it into a mural. The mural is about 9 feet tall and 80 feet long. So this is just a picture of me, sweaty and hot, but also just like very excited to be there on a community paint day. So the community was invited to help paint some of the pillars. And here's another shot of me just like adding the letters. So here's some of my favorite ones. It says "Love grows here." So a lot of the things that people wanted, they really wanted to just see themselves in the mural, and I think representation matters. And I also see a lot of the things that I do in the community as an extension of what I do in my studio. Both have feminist aims, and I think both matter. Just one's more personal and one's more communal and accessible, and I think that's very important that art is accessible to everybody. And another thing, they really wanted to highlight abundance, and they just wanted something that made them feel proud of from where they are. So this is what the mural looks like from afar. And they really were very adamant about making for sure they had different body types, positive messages, very colorful. They definitely wanted brown people in the mural. And it's something that I feel like not everybody is comfortable doing, and I just feel very honored to be a queer Black person, but to also like honor this neighborhood that has such a tight-knit support system, and it's really beautiful to kind of see them flourish.
Thank you so much, LaNia. LaNia, would you mind talking a little bit more about the challenges that you have connecting the different parts of your art practice? I mean, do you struggle to create a narrative that connects all of your different community projects with your more traditional art-making practice?
It was very difficult seeing how all those connected, because I think other people could see how they connected, but as an artist, when you're in it, it's like very difficult to see what other people are seeing, because you have your head down in your work and you're just making because it feels great. But I think it was nice to kind of sit down and think about why I care about the certain things that I do, and because also it matters. And so I can be a lot more passionate, or it can just come off as more passionate when I'm talking about it, when I have the meat and potatoes of why I'm doing it and connecting the dots. So I think it was very easy to kind of see the dots connecting during this fellowship, because not only could I talk about like what I do in my own paintings and stuff is like very personal and it's like a diary, but also it's kind of the same thing, just a lot larger and a lot more shared. And also I'm doing a lot of listening to people, and like they're telling me what they want. And I'm sort of doing the same thing in my personal life. So it was now I see the connections, and now I'm just like working on it. And I think there's always going to be things that I need to work on, and just like drawing the connection between all my practices, because I am juggling a lot, but I think I'll get better at it in time, and that's okay too. But now I feel like I'm starting to see all of the connections a lot more clear. Now that I've had people like point them out to me and like sit down and help me write about it, so that's been very helpful.
Thank you, LaNia. Thank you for sharing about that. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Chicago-based artist Hope Wang. Hope Wang specializes in weaving, screen printing, painting, and photography to create trompe-l'oeil documentations of sites of industrial labor, including building facades that have been eroded, replaced, or defaced. By focusing on these architectural scars, Wang explores how people form complicated relationships with the structures in their daily lives. Hope will be joining us from her studio in Chicago at Manna Contemporary. Hope, I'll let you start your presentation now.
Hi everyone, I just want to begin by thanking you all for inviting me to share my practice with you today. My name is Hope Wang, and I'm an artist currently based in Chicago. I primarily use hand weaving, screen printing, painting, and photography to reference sloppy traces of human activity around sites of industrial labor. Through my work, I explore loss and longing and question what happens to our memories when those physical artifacts disappear. Along with my practice, I also host and operate a floor loom rental resource out of my studio that I call Loom Room, which I will be talking briefly about, as well as my personal practice here today. So for those who may not be familiar with the jacquard loom, it is a computer-assisted loom whose software reads Photoshop files that I code with textile patterns. This loom then controls when and where the individual threads lift to form a pattern or image. The rest of the weaving process remains analog, where I am pressing a foot pedal to lift the threads and throwing a shuttle unspooling yarn across each line. Here's a quick image of the TC2 jacquard loom at the digital weaving residency I attended in May. I stayed in Cleveland at Praxis Fiber Workshop for a month-long independent weaving residency that I have spent the past summer slowly finishing works and inventorying them. So here's my further attempt to demystify the digital weaving process with a quick look at what a digital file coded with weave structures actually looks like before it then gets translated into cloth. So what I've done here is separate out layers of a grayscale value in this image and then assigned each layer with a corresponding pattern. So you can imagine each white pixel might be the horizontal threads and the black pixels might be the vertical threads in the woven cloth. So as we're looking at this, this is basically the code that the software reads line by line, and that correlates to which threads lift at what point in time. So as for the content of my work, I'm drawn to degrees of sloppy maintenance in public spaces. People work very hard, or sometimes not very diligently, to convey anything from peeling paint, architectural deterioration, or graffiti with some kind of coverage. These signifiers, such as paint patches, construction plywood, yellow safety zoning, have a material quality that delineate how we function, occupy, and transition through places. For me, the peripheral details about our environment hold meaning and narrative, even if they're often seen as provisional or haphazard. Much of my imagery comes from photographing patterns in factory parking lots, construction sites, and commutes around the city. I translate those photographs through other materials and medium like printed paperworks or woven textiles. The image on the right here is a piece I hand wove on the jacquard, using the representational technique of trompe l'oeil to push cloth to appear as a different material altogether. And I've made a habit of photographing shuttered storefronts over the past few years to translate into woven illusions. These weavings depict reflections of pedestrians and vacant spaces, suggested through blue tape, brown paper, plastic sheets, and spray-painted plywood that bar the viewer's access to realities beyond the surface. Empty storefronts encountered in between life cycles of public-facing activity often register as negative space in the broader cultural context of architectural landscape. It stands as a relic of failed architecture, regarded as without relevant narrative until the plastic, laminate wood, or brown paper comes down. And thus, for me, these thin spaces between physical occupancy and material manipulation of textile and photography suggest that meaning and memory are often in flux and often written over and over again. I've also been piecing together empty parking lots with facades of industrial buildings. The Midwest is populated with large expanses of warehouses and industrial facilities. And having worked several manual labor jobs, I've collected many images of the golden hour light casting shadows against buildings when shifts end and laborers have gone home. I've been also looking at parking lots, roads, sidewalks as sites of grief and longing. They're transient spaces that people pass through but do not see as a destination. I've been thinking about the traces of human activity left in asphalt as wounds, personifying the structural environment as something malleable and flesh-like. So the screenshot on the right was one of many I scoped out from Google's satellite images of parking lots scarred from reoccurring traffic. This one happened to be a COVID testing site near one of the West Side hospitals in Chicago. And while I had no intention to make art in response to the pandemic, it did heighten the prevalence and collective awareness of boundary making objects and its inherent relationship to human activity, even with the absence of a body. So even when the cars have gone home from this lot, a field of fluorescent ghosts remain. And so that was a glimpse into some of the work I was wrapping up this past summer. I want to touch on Loom Room, a product space housed in my own studio. I know and admire so many fiber artists in the city, but Chicago has yet to house a fiber studio where artists have a touch point to access quality equipment and community support with minimal barriers, separate from education centers and residencies. So in the summer of 2020, I acquired 2 floor looms through microgrants and crowdfunding to prioritize planting the seed, where I could rent out these looms to artists who have not have access to such equipment because of the inaccessibility of owning one. So the mentorship Gener8tor has provided so far has supported my research in further exploring how to develop this resource for emerging fiber artists to connect, create opportunities, and support each other's development across the city. And that's kind of what I've been working on through this past summer, is just really continue to develop my studio practice, as well as setting up this studio space in order to bring people in to access resources and to continue to build community for textile artists in Chicago.
Thank you so much for sharing your work with us, Hope. Can you speak a little bit more about the Jacquard loom and how your limited access to the Jacquard loom affects the way that you make your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I have so many things to say about access to the Jacquard. I don't even know where to begin, but basically the Jacquard loom is very limited in access currently within North America and honestly just around the world, but they are largely only available in teaching institutions, which means that most of the people who are accessing these are in undergrad art programs or MFA programs where they only have a limited amount of time on this equipment. So often like 2 to 3 years before they graduate out of access to it. And then none of those institutions, or there aren't really any institutions that have invested in making this equipment available outside of the institution. So for the alumni who come out of these spaces in order to access it. So I find it to be very upsetting and tragic for so many generations of students, of scholars, of artists who get to touch this equipment and then no longer have access to it. And they often end up in this approach where they don't know when they're going to next access it. And they end up having to switch to find other ways to make work or to explore different processes. And that's kind of what I did for the first 3 years of my practice when I started to re-explore studio work outside of an institution after art school. And the residency this spring was the first time that I wove on a Jacquard loom for the first time in 3 years. And it was kind of a frenzied experience because I was trying to make up for the 3 years of time in which I had been accruing all these ideas based on the research that I was doing when I was in school and hadn't really had the opportunity to actualize and materialize until now. So that's kind of the state of the situation with access to the loom, is that Praxis Fiber Workshop is really the only facility outside of institutions in the US that provides access for artists to use this equipment independently. And that's kind of huge, and I really hope to see more jacquard looms pop up to become available for artists to use as a community resource in the next few years. And hopefully I can possibly be one of those people who makes that happen in Chicago or elsewhere. But it would be great to continue to see more access be made available to people to learn and to make work on this equipment, because it's really exciting. I just think it's been a kind of a really unfortunate situation for people to lose access and to simply pause or abandon the kind of research and the kind of work they were making on this equipment, which has also contributed to how slow the prevalence and the sort of like exploration and experimentation that's possible on this equipment, because people only have such limited access to it, and that really cuts a lot of research short or off entirely.
Thank you so much for sharing that about your challenges accessing the jacquard loom technology to make your work. And thank you all for joining us today for the Gener8tor Art 2021 showcase. Good night.